An iconic motorcycle, a legendary motorcycle, maybe even mythical. This is the Laverda Jota. Hello, I'm James. Welcome to the Grumpy Petrolhead channel. Let's take this legendary motorcycle for a ride. I've always wanted one of them. That's something I hear quite often actually when I go out on this motorcycle. Sometimes even when I just stop for petrol. And it's something that I used to say myself on the rare occasion that I saw a Jota. The word Jota, it's a Spanish word from a dance, a Spanish dance. So is it really pronounced Jota? Don't know, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. In the early 80s, I used to read all the motorcycle magazines. I used to read every page of every bike magazine going. And something that used to come up would be the Laverda Jota. And it kind of started to have this legendary status quite early on in its life. And I'd hear stories about the monstrous heavy clutch, the very tall seat height and the challenging handling. I'd also hear about its fearsome performance, and that when it first came out in 1976, the bike was the fastest production motorcycle that you could buy. It was timed at just over 140 miles an hour by Motorcycle magazine at the Myra test track. And having ridden this bike at speed, that must have been a brave person. In 2003, I saw an advert for a Laverda Jota, and it was quite local to me, so I phoned up and it was sold. But that got the idea into my head that I needed to buy one of these. So Catherine and I, we went down to Slater's, who are the original importers of Laverda and the birthplace of the Laverda Jota. and they had a couple of earlier models in stock. They had this one and a gold one. I really bought this one because I like the colour, and it was actually a 76 motorcycle, but it wasn't registered until 1979. This I didn't think too much about at the time. I was so enamoured by the fact that I was buying a Laverda Jota from Richard Slater himself, that it didn't really occur to me to look into the history. So, as is my usual way of doing things, it seems that I research things after I buy them. That's not recommended, by the way, but you can get lucky, and I got lucky with this bike. So I started to chase the history of the bike. Now, it turned out that it wasn't registered until '79 for a good reason, and that reason was production racing. So the bike wasn't registered until 1979, although it was actually a 1976 motorcycle. So I managed to talk to the original owner of the bike, and the original owner explained to me that the bike was in sports motorcycling racing colours when he bought it, and it was actually used as a race bike. The bike was bought by Sports Motorcycles in 1976, and it was entered into the 1977 FIM Formula 1 championship race at the Isle of Man. And in that race, it actually came 6th. How extraordinary. I was lucky to buy a bike with a little bit of racing history. It was a short race because the weather was ridiculously bad. But nevertheless, this bike raced against the likes of Mike Hayward at the Isle of Man, and that's to me that's a big bonus. Now this bike's been around the block a little bit. It's a little bit battered and bruised, but that's all part of its patination, shall we say. And I do know from my research that it was retired in '79 when it was crashed, and that's why it has slightly later wheels on the bike, and it was then registered on the road. And it was in this sports racing colours. And the owner who bought the bike, the first registered owner who bought the bike, he painted the whole bike red. Now the bike in fact was originally this colour when it was delivered to Slater's in 1976. A subsequent owner put it back to its original colour. But underneath some of the panels where the paint scratched a little bit, you can actually see some of the red paint that's still there. Here's a brief history of Laverda motorcycles. They were actually a manufacturer of farm machinery, tractors and combine harvesters. Then one of the sons of the owner of the company decided that it would be a good idea to make motorcycles. So that's what they did, and they had quite a lot of success, mainly with the smaller capacity machines. And then as they went through their life of making motorcycles, they started making bigger and better machines, and they made 750 machines. Will you be quiet? I'm filming. Then they made 750 machines, and they had a chief designer, and his name was, wait for this, Luciano Zen. How about that? So as they carried on manufacturing motorcycles, their 750 with another cylinder grew into a triple, into a 1000cc triple. So the 1000cc triple was a fast, powerful and good handling motorcycle. And the importers in the mid-70s were Richard and Roger Slater of Slater's Motorcycles. And they had an idea. So the Slater brothers, as the importer of the Laverda motorcycles, decided to develop the 3CE. What they did was they put higher compression pistons in the bike, they put the racing 4C camshaft in the bike, and they developed their own exhaust system with a larger collector box. And the result was a 90 brake horsepower Superbike. In the 1970s, production racing was quite a big thing, and there was one race series which was called the Avon Production Racing Series, the tyre manufacturer Avon. In 1976 and 1978 and 1979 and 1980, that production race series was won by Laverda Jota. So this legendary aura about the motorcycle was building fast. So you can see why the Laverda Jota has become this an iconic machine. Oh, crikey. I guess a lot of the stories about the Laverda Jota being a handful and difficult to ride, and you have to be physically strong and all these things to manage one. I mean, that all helps with the mythical status of the bike, or the iconic status of the bike. And when I bought this machine in 2003, I was a little bit conscious of that and the physical size of it. The seat height is 32.5 inches. And it's well over 500 pounds, so it is a big, heavy motorcycle, and a lot of that weight is held up quite high in the frame. Having said all that, after owning this bike for over 20 years, yes, the clutch is heavy, but it's not too heavy that it's unmanageable. Sometimes in heavy traffic, or if I'm going around the North Circular 2 up and I'm filtering, the clutch can get a little bit tiresome, shall we say. But apart from that, I've never really found it to be a bother. I know you can get longer actuating arms for the clutch lever, and you can even get hydraulic clutch conversions. I've never really found that to be necessary. The handling's really quite good and really manageable. I would say that over 100 mile an hour, I have done track days on this bike. Over 100 mile an hour, it does get a little bit scary. It's not precise or stable like, say, a Moto Guzzi or a Ducati. It does feel a little bit like it's going to get away from you. And how these guys raced in the production series and on the Isle of Man, hats off to those people. They must have been very talented and and very brave in equal measure. But for everyday use on the open road, absolutely fine. Another thing about they say about especially the earlier models of the Jota, like this one, is the ignition timing. It's a sort of a basic Bosch electronic ignition system, and this has the standard ignition system on the bike. They say it can be a bit jerky and you can feel the advanced retard coming in, etc. Again, this is really smooth. It's very tractable engine. It's a linear engine. It's really not a handful at all. The places to be aware of the bike is not really so much riding it in an everyday situation. It's parking it and getting it onto the stand. The ground has to be nice and level to get it on the stand. I've had Slate has actually for me fitted a side stand when I bought the bike, which comes in very handy. If the ground's uneven, it's a little bit worrying when you're trying to heave it onto the centre stand and it's not quite steady. The bike has at the time top of the range Brembo brakes, and they work very well. They haven't got an awful lot of feel. They're quite wooden. They do work, and you do need to give them a good old pull, and but you do get used to it. And the physicality of it is a physical bike to ride, but that's part of its charm. It's not so difficult to ride that it puts you off in any way riding it. And as I said earlier, the only real worry about the handling is if you're really going for it, which you don't do on the road anyway. And the acceleration is exciting. And what is exciting about the bike is the noise. That 3-cylinder engine and the howl that it makes. It really is something special. After over 20 years of ownership, let's think, 25, 2003, so that's 22 years of ownership. I haven't found it difficult bike to live with. I've had to do some work and repairs on it. I've had to repair the starter clutch, and we've also had a head gasket leaking, and what that means is there's some O-rings in the head gasket because the oil ways go up through the through studs into the cylinder head, and then the O-rings perish. The head gasket doesn't leak as such, but you get a lot of oil spray from the cylinder head. So I was getting rather a wet boot until I decided to fix it. Changing the head gasket was a little tricky. I didn't want to take the engine out because I felt if I started to do that, the bike might end up as a several year full restoration. Now you can take the cylinder head off with it in the frame, but it does mean slightly bending one of the through studs. In Laverda's own manual, it does say that you can bend the stud to get it clear of the top frame, so that you can change a head gasket. But I successfully did it, and but I did replace the stud. I didn't like the idea of putting a stud back that I tweaked a little bit to get it out. This bike is a little scruffy and, as I said earlier, a bit patinated. I quite like that. I like its battle scars. Everything's in good condition and it's all running as well as it should. In fact, it runs very well indeed. It handles great and it brakes good and it goes very well. If I was to ever restore it, maybe I'd put it back in the colours of the sport racing motorcycles team back in the 70s. What do you think? What would you do? Do you like bikes with battle scars and patination, or do you prefer bikes that are fully restored and everything exactly as it should be. I have a lot of respect and admiration for those people who have the patience and the attention to detail to put a machine back exactly as it was, say, on its year of manufacture. I don't really possess much in the way of patience. I can see the appeal of both ways. But what do you think? I mean, I'm inclined to leave the bike as it is. It's going well. It sounds great. Perhaps if something went seriously wrong, like the crankshaft failed or something major catastrophe happened in the engine, perhaps at that point I might strip it all down and maybe we'll put it back to the specification it was when it used to race at the Isle of Man. What do you think? It'd be great to have your opinion, and so please let us know in the comments. It's always good to hear from you. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Grumpy Petrolhead, and next week we might be looking at another iconic motorcycle of the 70s, or maybe we might be looking at some repairs I need to do on one of the vintage cars. So if any of that is of interest to you, please stick around. I want a special thanks to all of you who have subscribed, really do appreciate it. And thank you so much for all the comments that we're getting. That's probably the most fun part of the YouTube channel is reading the comments. So please feel free to comment on anything you like. It's always great to hear from you. And hopefully we'll see you next time. Cheerio!